Hey guys, I'm back. Thanks for stopping by. I'm sorry about the scheduling mix-up before. I originally scheduled this for 4 o'clock, and I had some equipment issues. I had to reschedule it. So, uh, hoping that you'll all, hoping that somebody will show up because I kind of screwed up the scheduling. So, anyway, nonetheless, I'm going to get started. We'll just wait for. I'm not going to wait for people to show up. So. Just stick with me and we'll get going.
If you fail to understand, then the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
Okay, good. So today we're going to read another chapter of my book, Scientology, The Big Lie, How I Made an Evil Cult Look Good. And this particular chapter is about a time that we spent at Golden Era Productions uh, shooting at a film studio at Air Force Base. A really interesting situation. I don't know that it's that important of a story, but it gives me a framework to talk about a lot of very interesting things. And I think to me, one of the most interesting things is this whole story. It takes place at a place called Loma Linda, which was about a 35-minute drive from Gold. Loma Linda is kind of noted for its teaching hospital. For Loma Linda University has one of the finest teaching hospitals in the country. But I think even more notably, it's in what are called the blue zones. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with the blue zones. These are areas of the world, geographic areas of the world in which the most number of people, they have the highest concentration of people that live to be 100, minimally 100. And here's a description. So the blue zones are regions where people live longer and healthier lives than average. The term was coined by National Geographic journalist Dan Buettner, who identified areas as a combination of lifestyle, diet, culture, and community that contribute to longevity. Now, here's a list you might be, it's just a few places. They are Okinawa in Japan, and the Nuoro province in Sardinia, Italy, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Ikaria in Greece, and Loma Linda, California, which amazes me because they got bad air quality and it's kind of a depressed area. But nonetheless, we were working in one of the blue zones. And I must say, while that geographic area was promoting longevity, Scientology was working it's working itself overtime to reduce longevity. So without further ado, I'm going to read this. So this is chapter 15, and it is, the title of the chapter is Norton Air Force Base. I forgot to get myself a little bit better light, but I'll be okay. According to Scientology management technology, if a specific group, such as an auditing unit or a film crew, routinely produced at a high rate, it was eligible to receive increased funding, more staff, and maybe even a new building. An area that did not produce received minimal or no funding. By the late 90s, film production at Gold had increased to the degree that Miscavige was eager to construct a large film studio, enabling Gold to expand the scale and quantity of its film production. In the meantime, having outgrown Gold's tiny shooting space, known as the gym, that was literally no larger than a basketball court, and had gotten that name when Gold planners, wanting to maintain secrecy concerning the actual plan to build a film studio, falsified a request for building permits, claiming they were building a gym. I think that might be, I heard my old friend Gary Moorhead say today on Natalie Webster's channel, they were talking, and he mentioned that there was a rumor, the local lore in that area was that Golden Era Productions was a film studio that was making pornography, but nobody knows where that rumor came from or got started. I think it got started because they created so much secrecy about the original building of a studio. They lied on the permit, but it was pretty obvious they were filming. Maybe it was just wishful thinking on the part of the nearby residents. But I think that the secrecy with which they surrounded the studio there at Gold originally, I think that spawned the local lore that they were a bunch of pornographers. So anyway, let's go on here. Having outgrown that gym, We needed to rent a larger studio until an adequately sized facility could be constructed on the gold property. We had rented studios in the LA area when absolutely necessary, but that was a rare occurrence. And when it came to the bean counters at gold, as Scientology liked to refer to its finance people, adopting whatever slang was available to avoid making the direct reference to money. Yeah, they hate the word money. It's really weird. I have many stories about how you just don't want to use the word money when you're talking about spending money in Scientology or earning money. You don't want, or stealing money from people. You don't want to refer to it as money. Uh, the idea of renting was an anathema to was as anathema as garlic to a vampire. I was looking forward to the possibility that I might be working in a rented stage closer to home. Well, the new studio was built. What transpired was a different story altogether. In his crusade to rebuild the military, President Bill Clinton looked to cutting out waste and focusing on the kinds of wars it would face in Bosnia, Kosovo, and Afghanistan. Norton Air Force Base and March Air Force Base, two of the military bases under review for the chopping block, were a mere 15 minutes apart and 40 minutes from gold. Over the years, most of the day-to-day operations of the area were handled out of March, so the Clinton military planners determined that Norton should be shut down and its functions and personnel moved to March. It happened that Norton was home to the Air Force and Audiovisual Services, which included a large soundstage. It also happened that Narconon had been built on ancestral territory once owned by the San Manuel Indians. Okay, before anybody starts giving me shit for calling them Indians, I'm only referring to them to Indians because that's what they call themselves, not Native Americans. So yeah, it's a big deal to them. They're Indians and they're proud of it. So whatever people are calling themselves, in deference and respect to them, I'm going to use their language. So that's where that's at. Because I've been corrected on that before. You should have said Native Americans. With the closure of the Air Force Base, the land reverted to a consortia of local governments, including San Bernardino County, which part of the land, with part of the land being returned to the San Manuel tribe, the part of it where the soundstage was located. Okay, this is like a contractual thing that the U.S. government has in their territorial land leases with the Indians. When they're working on Indian land, any Indian land that the government took over and is using, if it is ever deemed obsolete, it automatically by treaty reverts back to the Indians. So this soundstage shooting facility at Norton Air Force Base became reverted back to the Indians, which to me was just infinitely fascinating. I have no idea how Somanet Gold ever found out about the local Native American tribe that that a local Native American tribe were the new owners of an Air Force built film studio and were only too happy to rent it out for a fraction of the cost of an equivalently sized sound stage rental in the LA area. But they found out and a deal was struck. With their long braided hair flowing down from 10-gallon Stetsons, snakeskin boots, and shiny turquoise rodeo buckles, it was obvious that our new landlords didn't need the rent money. Their casinos provided plenty of that. Shortly after we took possession of the studio at Norton, a small contingent of the tribe's leaders arrived in their blacked out Suburbans to graciously invite us to their casino for a banquet and fun. I recall one of them excitedly explaining how he envisioned turning the soundstage into a tourist attraction with a rooftop restaurant and a cocktail bar. Back at Gold, I lobbied for permission to take my Sea Org crew for a visit to the Indian casino. I argued it would be an insult to turn down their generous invitation. No one agreed. Yeah, I thought I could get the guys a day off at a casino. Yeah, fat chance. But I tried. The studio at Norton was built to Cold War specs. With its mammoth 2-foot thick concrete stage doors, the building was designed to withstand a nuclear blast, literally, and soundproof so that you could hear the pin drop as a fighter jet took off on the adjacent runway. If you overlooked the clusters of black widows and scorpions in the restrooms and the wasted time driving back and forth from Gold, it was not a bad place to film. At least it was quiet and spacious. Film production at Norton ran smoothly enough until we, hold on one second. Sorry, I needed to turn the comments on. If you have a question, please start your comment with question. If you have a comment, say comment. I'm more than happy. I'm more than happy to stop and answer them, but I'm going to go through all these as we go on. Okay, so let me just find my place again. So, film production at Norton ran smoothly enough until we shot a film titled TRs in Life. TR being short for training routine. The TRs are exercises or drills used in Scientology to teach a person to communicate effectively so that they can control people and situations. They're also used to get students to comply with orders, but that's not part of this story. At least that's the claim. In reality, maybe I did say that. In reality, they force a kind of rigid communication style and push the magical thinking that through thought alone, one can control their environment and other people. Structurally, TRs are composed of repetitive actions or a total absence of action, which, like, if you're sitting there doing nothing, that's what I mean by absence of action, while fixating on a person or an object, and thereby produce a kind of trance state that can be experienced as euphoria by the person doing the drill. There are what are known as professional TRs, a ridiculously high standard of supposed communication skills that are requirements of professional auditors. The passing standard for professional TRs, students must receive a pass from a supervisor before they can progress, unless having the student sit across includes having the student sit across from another student, staring at them until they can do this with no discomfort for 2 hours. In all, there are 9 TRs, each teaching that what Hubbard defined as the skills one needs in order to succeed as a Scientology auditor or in life. That was redundant. Okay. Then there are more permissive TRs, sometimes referred to as public TRs, comprising the communication skills one needs to succeed in everyday life. The public TRs are you tracking that I'm being facetious when I say that? I'm not literally saying that. TRs are not different from the professional, the public TRs are not different from the professional TRs. They are merely a watered down version. Because so many of our interpersonal problems stem from social conflicts resulting from communication difficulties, the idea of improving your life by improving your ability to communicate is a strong selling point for Scientology. The passing standard selling point, meaning the way that they hook you into the Roach Motel. The passing standard for public TRs is deliberately low, making it easy for the new student to have a win. The Scientology course teaching public TRs, the Success Through Communications course, or COM course for short, is probably the most attended course in all of Scientology and has probably introduced more people to Scientology than any other Scientology offering. The technical training films are only available to students enrolled in Scientology training courses, except 2 films. Hubbard designated for the general public. And I hope, because these films were shown publicly, I'm hoping that somehow copies of them surface and we can actually take a look at them and react to them, because they're pretty amazing. They really show the depth of kind of mind control pattern, language that Hubbard used in these films. But who knows? Maybe we'll never get to see them. One of those two public films was titled TRs in Life, in which, through a series of vignettes featuring supposedly real-life situations, the audience is shown how an exact violation of each one of the 9 Hubbard-defined communication skills leads to a disastrous result. The film concludes with all the main characters miraculously transported into a Scientology chapel where they receive a lecture on the proper use of TRs. The film was shot entirely on location except for the end sequence, which was shot at Norton. As usual, the day schedule started early in the morning. Due to various disruptions, we were still going after sundown. During the execution of the grand finale shot, The computer-controlled camera crane kept having difficult technical problems. As a result, and in violation of labor laws for filming 20 professional actors, many of whom were Scientologists, were kept on the set until sunrise. It was a bloodbath. The crew member responsible for running the set insisted that the shot had to be completed that night as the film was on a tight deadline to be shown at an upcoming international event. The film had been included in the event planning approved by Miscavige. The weight of that approval caused the crew to push to get it done that night, resulting in the mistreatment of the actors, some of whom were not Scientologists, and a major PR nightmare for Gold. Miscavige sent out a dispatch reprimanding the crew and proclaiming he never ordered the film to be completed for the screen. In a literal sense, he never gave such an order. He did, however, approve the plan that it be shown at the event, and that approval had the same authority as an explicit order to get it done now. It was a distinction without difference, and a management tactic he and execs below him employed as a way to deflect blame away from themselves. The road to failure at Gold was paved with the bodies of those who had been given an impossible order and then punished for failing to complete it. As a result of our failure to get the film done on time, everyone involved in the shoot was hauled into ethics and subjected to brutal weeks-long security checks, during which time the crew was required to sleep outdoors in tents. During the day, they were subjected to hours of strenuous marching, led by a veteran Sea Org officer brought to the base by Miscavige to run the crew through military-style boot camp drills. I was sitting on a bench outside the HCO offices. That's the Hubbard Communications office where ethics is located. You know, the so-called HR people in the Sea Org, which they're not. A break away from my meet. Okay, so here we are. Taking a break from my metered interrogation when the crew marched by, their drill master shouting off, "Hut, hut, hut," their eyes fixed forward. One of the gappers in the crew, a young man who couldn't have been more than 18 years old, turned his head to look at me. A few years later, he was called out by Miscavige in front of the entire base in the most humiliating way. His life was ruined. He had no hope of any kind of future, so he hopped the fence with $500 to his name. Not long after I ceased all interactions with Scientology, he phoned, telling me he recalled the day he saw me sitting on that bench outside HCO and thinking that if I, an outsider who had been hired as a skilled professional, wasn't safe from Scientology's oppressive justice system at Gold, then no one was. Practically in tears, he relayed how he'd waited 20 years to tell me that it was working with me that gave him the courage to leave and the confidence to start what turned out to be a very successful career. At least I have the satisfaction of knowing I did that. This was the first time I was treated to Scientology's version of being pilloried in the town square. It would not be the last. And that's the end of the chapter. Okay. We're going to go through some comments here. Appreciate your making them. Hey, degraded daughter, nice to see you. I'm excited to have you here. Yeah, and so Howard Taylor Esquire says, hello, Mitch, please stay safe. Best wishes from the UK. Yeah, so I was out walking a little earlier. Fortunately, I'm in a neighborhood that is was not affected by the virus, but even in my neighborhood, there was a power outages, people lost internet. I did not experience that. And the air quality in my neighborhood has been really pretty good. Like today, there was practically no smoke. I didn't feel like I had to wear a mask. So I'm feeling, I'm feeling particularly fortunate. While at the same time, my heart is completely broken, thinking about the people who've suffered the incredible losses, and also just watching, like seeing. And I've only seen it on television because there's no way I'm going to go anywhere near this stuff and interfere potentially with the firefighters. But I grew up in LA. I learned to surf at Malibu. It's like you your first love, your first breakup, your first fight, your first, you're seeing all these places where, schools that you played sports against or not, or just gone, just burned down. Like, I grew up in LA. I love LA. I grew up in the Hollywood Hills, not far from where that Sunset Fire was. Uh, we almost lost our home when I was a little kid, but fortunately in Laurel Canyon, but fortunately we didn't. And so we're kind of used to these things, but this is something different. This is like, I mean, let's face it. I'm in the later part of my life, and and it's like I know I won't live to ever see LA transformed back. I don't think I'll live long enough, depending on how fast they can do it, to ever see it sort of get to the point like it is with the 1938 flood, which nobody even remembers, which was worse than Katrina and 100 times worse than any of these fires. Not to take anything away from the current tragedy, but I am safe and I am fortunate, and hopefully that'll continue. Uh, hey, Professor Kakan, thanks for letting me know your notifications are working, because we never know about that. Now, I didn't read this, but this looks interesting. Professor Kakan, always good to have you here. Uh, the studio at Silver Sands Ranch in La Quinta was built on top of a tennis court. The original Cine Studio was a converted date packing plant at the Special Unit Winter Headquarters in La Quinta. Yeah, the date packing plant. Yeah, we know all about that. But yeah, so for those of you who don't know, some of the early films when David Miscavige was on the crew, and Norman Starkey was on the crew, and Mike Rinder was there as he was a messenger and so forth. It was in a day packing plant. That property included a day packing plant, and it was a relatively small room, but it also had posts holding up the roof, which is really difficult to shoot in a space. You'd have to include the poles, the metal poles in your set designs. And I was never there. I never worked there, but yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. I got that. That's a comment. Plus, yeah, it was kind of irresistible. Once I saw you had written La Quinta, I was like, oh, I have to read this. Jefferson Hawkins, my old friend. Hey, Jeff, how you doing? Jeff says, what does Jeff say? Jeff says, hey, Mitch, glad to catch you live. I did 2-hour no blink TRs on the ship. Torture. Oh my God. I can't even imagine. I don't know. Maybe it's like, I'm just not neurologically wired to do that shit. I mean, you've seen me interviewed, and the difficulty I have not even interrupting people. I mean, because my brain just goes like a million miles a minute, and I am working on that. Part of it is I struggle with getting enough sleep, and that kind of puts you in that zone. But I never completed a TR course. I shot the film, professional TR course film, but I could never do it. I could not do blinkless or any kind of TRs for 2 hours. So that is absolute torture. Uh, and it's a level of indoctrination people don't even talk about. Uh, Okay, so Professor Kakan says, question, public TRs, who put that in place? Sounds like a technical degrade if you were a 1965 standard tech Scientologist. Yeah, that could be. No, here, I'll tell you how Hubbard put it in place when he actually did it for the comm course. If you remember the comm course, I think they had I don't know when the comm course, the communications course, which then later became what we call the STCC course, which was the Success Through Communications course. And he referred to them back then. And that was, I mean, that when I got into Scientology in 73, that course existed. And those were called public TRs. And then when he wrote the technical training films, which he wrote at La Quinta, one of the films he wrote was called The Different TR Courses and Their Criticisms, which is, where I initially learned about passing standards and the different kinds of TRs. But they needed to have some TRs they could teach to new people, to suckers just walking in off the street, because they couldn't say, okay, sit down and stare at this guy for 2 hours, and if you can pull it off, we'll give you a pass. They couldn't do that. So they had to just do these real light, simple TRs. So, but yeah, it was not a technical degree, because it was a marketing ploy to give new people something, to give them a win and make them feel good. Let me see, what else do we got? Kaz says, wow, fascinating and heartbreaking. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think some of the worst things that I experienced in Scientology happened at Norton Air Force Base. I know I've spoken live with Mark Headley, who I worked with at Norton. Mark was at Norton. A lot of you know Mark Headley. Uh, and he used to mention the food a lot because they'd load up these I don't know, what do you call them, these like catering, like dishes, with the metal with the little fire under them. They load those up in the van in the morning, and that would be the crew's food, which they would eat 4 or 5 hours later. And then for dinner, they'd usually drive another bunch of stuff up because it was just, they never figured out how to really do catering for a crew, unfortunately. But one of the bright spots for me was because the studio was in Loma Linda, which is in the blue zones. The people that are living so long out there, they're Seventh Day Adventists. That the Loma Linda College is a university is a Seventh Day Adventist school, and they're very big on health food and eating a really healthy diet. So, I was able to not eat that crew food and drive into the city close 20 minutes away and have some of the best vegan tacos I've ever had in my life. So at least there was that. That was at the Cactus Cooler off the 10 at Tippecanoe. If anybody's ever out in that area, you might want to check it out. Oh, thanks to greater daughter. Says, happy you're safe. I hope it stays that way. I do too. Right now, there's a lot less smoke in the air. Things are really looking up, but I know we're having another wind event tomorrow. So we're all a little nervous about that. Oh, yes. Kaz says, question, can you please let us know about the shiny trophies behind you? My eyes aren't, I think he meant great, but they look like Emmys. No, those aren't Emmys. Those are actually Clio awards. Clios are like the Oscars of TV commercials. And back in the day before I worked for Gold, when I was directing TV commercials, I won a bunch of Clios. And so I just kind of put them because I needed some set dressing. So I'm seeing one of them I won a bunch of them, but because I worked for a company. These I won on my own after I left the Robert Abel Associates, who I worked for. One of these is for Sony for a Walkman product. It's that long ago, and the other one, it's a corporate ad for TRW. But anyway, there were one's for computer graphics, one's for animation, because that's what I was involved with heavily. These ads, one was the Sony one was computer animation, and the other one was a combination of live action and special effects, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that's what that's all about. These are Clios. So dun, 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 dun. So what else do we got? Yeah, sorry about Kaz says, yes, so sorry about what's happening in LA. Yeah, it's tragic. It's like yeah, you're welcome, Kaz, for the answer. So that's basically it. If nobody else has any other questions, I'm trying to think, was there something else that I wanted to talk about here? No, that's pretty much it. I had some other stuff going on, but I need to organize that a little bit better. So look, I'm going to try to keep it reading these. I want to get through it. As you all know, I think I moved and I put the studio back up around me, my little recording booth. I'm working on getting the audiobook done. I know it's been like months and months. I've been working on it since God, I think almost a year, but it's just been very challenging to get it done. So, but I want to complete it so that it is a podcast that anybody can just listen to on YouTube. And that also there's an audiobook if people want to actually purchase it. But it's not just about money. It's about really getting the story out and making sure that I can make it as accessible as possible, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing these readings. Plus, it's just kind of fun to be able to stop and talk about this kind of stuff. Yeah, I'll tell you, I mentioned in the book about the Black Widows and so forth. there were, like, when you went into the restroom out there, you literally had to like sweep away. There were little baby scorpions that were about that big, and the black widows. And so there's a thing in Scientology, they have all these reports, like knowledge reports. One of them is called a hygiene report. And so I thought, I'm going to write a hygiene report on this. I'm going to see if I can get somebody out here to like really take care of this insect infestation. But every time I went out there with a camera, I could never get a picture. They were never around. So my children were quite small then, and being boys, they had lots of fake insects, little rubber insects and shit like that. And so I literally dressed the toilet and the floor with little insects, and then I kind of shook the camera a little to make it blurry, which made them look realer. And I turned in a report, but nobody handled it. I will tell you one thing: we built on the property out there. I didn't write about this, but we built for one of the 2 public films we shot out there. We built like a replica, like a slightly scaled down replica of a part of the front of the CIA building, and then we blew it up for a film. And we had a pyro guy out spending an entire day loading explosives into this thing, and it was a massive explosion. And they told emergency services for miles, but it didn't matter. The fire department never showed up, but the explosion was so loud and it sent off so much pressure that it set off car alarms like for miles around. And when we went into the different outbuildings, there were spiders, hundreds of spiders had died from the pressure and had dropped from the ceilings. So you sort of had to wade through these jungles of hanging spiders. So anyway, it's pretty crazy. A lot of crazy goings on there. So that's pretty much it. I want to thank all of you for sticking around, especially sticking around to the end. And with that, we're going to say hello to my little friend, and I will see you soon. Thank you so much. Oh!